So as you can see here, I've got my 9-step value scale laid out here, nice and centered on the sheet of paper. 1 inch by 1 inch squares, equal borders on all 4 sides. Got a kneaded eraser here, some sharpening tools, blending stump, paper towel, and my graphite pencils in various grades. I've got an HB, 4H, and a 5B. And I've got a little grayscale value scale here for reference. So first off, you want to make sure that your pencil is nice and sharp. So bring it to that long tapered point. When we're creating value, we want to use the side of the pencil rather than using pressure. I'm going to have black on one end, white on the other. Just going to use the white of the paper for this white square. The black on this end, I'm not sure how dark I'm going to get. I may not be able to get all the way to black, but that's okay. So I'm going to start off with this middle square. This middle square represents halfway in between our black and our white on the value scale. So I've also got my example graphite value scale here. So you can see my black on here, my darkest square is not quite totally black, it's just a really dark gray. Pretty close to what I've got here on my example. But I'm gonna go for this middle square here, this value 4 or 5 here in the center. So again, use the side of the pencil. Keep your marks nice and light. You want to build value in layers rather than with pressure. To achieve evenness and consistency in my area of tone, I'm going to try to apply it in an even and consistent manner. I'm just going to start with an initial layer here. Not too worried about going outside of the lines at this point. An initial light layer. And I'm not really using any pressure, downward pressure at all, right? Just dragging the graphite over the sheet of paper. Got a few spots here that I missed that I'm just gonna hit real quick, this first pass. You know, it's a little stripy, a little inconsistent, but that's all right. It's just my first pass. In the next layer, I'm going to work in the same manner, methodically from one side to the other, but I'm going to work in a different direction now. I can rotate my paper to help me get that different direction if I want to. I'm just going to do the same thing with another light layer layered on top. And I'm trying to make it as even and consistent all the way across there as I can. Pay attention to the edges of the square. That's when we get a little hesitant, and those often stay too light because we don't have as much graphite there. A little more consistent, and then it's also now with the second layer getting a little darker. I'm going to do a third layer now, working in a third direction. It's going diagonally the first 2 layers. So now I'm going to work vertically here with a parallel to the side edge of the square. All right, so that's 3 layers there. I want to maintain my edges here. So if I get a little bit out of the lines here, I'll go ahead and clean that up a little bit. You can fashion your kneaded eraser into a wedge to give you a little more precise edge. So one other thing we can do to get evenness and consistency here, after a few layers, I like to bring in some sort of blending material. So a blending stump works well. You can even use a paper towel. And you can also even use your kneaded eraser as a blending tool. If you pass it lightly over the area of graphite, it can blend it. I'm going to try out this blending stump here. When I'm using the blending stump or the kneaded eraser or the paper towel, you want to make sure that you're still working in an organized, consistent manner. I'm going to work in much the same way as I did with the pencil, starting at one side and gradually working my way to the other. Again, I'm using a really light pressure. I'm not pressing down too hard with the blending stump. I'm just lightly passing it over my areas of graphite. I might make another blending pass in a different direction. Again, you don't want to press too hard. Press too hard, you're going to mash down the paper fibers and damage the paper and make it really hard to correct and fix. So I had 3 layers and then a couple blending stump passes there. You can see it's smoother, but you know, we've got a darker area up here in this corner, getting a little light here down on this edge, through there too perhaps. On that edge it's a little lighter. To help you seek inconsistencies in your area of tone, squint your eyes. Helps you see those inconsistencies a little better. Before I move into another layer, I want to go ahead and try to fix some of these inconsistencies, right? So whenever I see a light area, I'm just going to go back in with my pencil and add graphite just to those areas, right? So I'm seeing a light spot, a light edge along the edge of this step here, edge of this square. So I'm going to add graphite just to that area. And I'm going to add that graphite until that value matches the value right next to it. A light spot here on this edge. Add a little more graphite in there. And I can blend that out a little bit too with my blending stump so it matches the rest of my square. So you'll notice I've got a little bit of a darker area here in this corner. And if I go back in with some more graphite, if I just stay in that area, you'll notice it'll get darker and darker, right? The more graphite I lay down there. So what do you do if you've got a dark spot there? How can you even that out? So say I didn't want to go any darker with the rest of this. This was the value I'm going for. That's the middle value, you know, somewhere in between a 4 and a 5. I could probably use a few more layers before I get there, but I want to go ahead and show you how to correct a dark area now. You could fix that by making this lighter area around it darker, but I don't want to, right? I want to keep that value. That's the value I want. So if I've got a dark spot here, what I can do, well, what I need to do is remove graphite off of there, right? So I'm going to grab my kneaded eraser and kind of fashion it into a wedge. And then I'm going to pass my kneaded eraser just over that dark area, right? Very lightly and gently passing it over that dark spot, that dark area, pull some of that graphite up off of there. It's a really little dark spot left behind there. Again, I can shape my kneaded eraser into a finer point, and then just dab it down right into that one spot. If you see any other dark spots through there, you can dab it down in there. Try to smooth it out and even it out. If I pull up too much, you know, as I'm seeing a few light spots here, I'm just going to go back in, additive technique, add graphite just to those areas. use your different pencil grades to your advantage, right? If I'm going for the lighter gray squares, right, I'm going to switch to a lighter graphite, a 4H or so. I'm going for one of these darker steps down here, I might switch to a 5B. Another thing I forgot to mention, and I'm seeing it here as I'm laying in this 5B, there's a texture. Some of that texture is created from the tooth of the paper. Most of it's created by the texture on the surface that's underneath my paper. So pay attention to what you're drawing on. Right? If you're starting to get texture or lines or something in there, you might get another blank sheet of paper and place it underneath. And that'll help reduce the texture and the marks that come up from the surface underneath your paper. Now sometimes if you need to get down into a particular spot, you know, if we need to get graphite down in between the paper fibers, if there's a little light spot, I can hold my pencil up at a steeper angle to get graphite down into that lower recessed area. If you're holding your pencil at a steeper angle, it's going to naturally make a darker mark, so you want to maintain a light touch if you're using that steeper angle. But it will allow you, when you're getting into these later stages of developing the area of tone, it will allow you to get graphite down into some of those light areas that your pencil point skips over when it's at such a shallow angle. This process of building your tone up in layers can take some time. It's well worth the effort. When we start to use this skill, this tone in our drawings, we're going to use it to create light and shadow. The more even and consistent it is, the more it'll read as a shadow. Right? Shadows tend to recede or push back into the space. Right? And the more even and consistent we can make our area of tone, the more it'll do that. If it's spotty or it has a lot of texture, if it's stripy, right? Oftentimes our areas tones will we'll be able to see the individual marks, right? It'll look stripy like that. That texture, those individual marks, that pushes that area of tone forward, right? So we want it to recede, to push back. Take your time, be patient, and if you've got something you can compare it to, do that. There's plenty of good 9-step value scales online that you can download and print out. I got this from Amazon. It's pretty handy. Have at it.